Hello, welcome. This is Alloy Day 19. My name is Shion Costello. I'm here at Experimental Sound Studio in Chicago, and I am going to be kind of continuing some of the momentum built on discovering ways of combining bolts and screws with these felt pads that are cut into smaller pieces. And so I'm going to work with that some more. I really was interested in, like I said, combining it with bolts and screws, but I would love to dig deeper into the split tones that was being created by having like two pitches really close together but out of tune with each other, two of the strings or two of the three out of tune with one of the three. So yeah, just kind of having those quarter tones and playing with that and seeing what can be done with felt to make the piano sound really unusual. And then finally to either just improvise with it or to think about rep in like the classical world or jazz or pop or something. Find something that might work with that super out of tune, quote unquote, out of tune setup. So I'm looking forward to exploring those possibilities with felt pads cut into small pieces and put in between the strings of the piano. All right, kind of looks like like lumber stacked up here, but I got the felt pads cut into pretty much similar pieces or close to similar as possible. One other side note is I am going to just sort of start with G because it's often, domino board set up here, set of dominoes ready to go. These are felt pads all cut into small pieces and progressively thicker, or I guess wider, you could say, as it goes lower. 5, and then the lowest note is D3. And they all have a very interesting, kind of uniform sound. All right, that wraps up day 19 of the Alloy project. Doing some work with the felt pads that I cut into small strips and put in between the strings to split the pitches into sort of these harmonics and some mutes and quarter tone sounding stuff all over the place. It made it sound, well, frankly, it just sounded like an out-of-tune piano in a way, like a very out-of-tune piano. And what was maybe the most interesting part about all of this was the way to play the instrument to complement such a setup. I found that playing polytonally is really interesting. And generally speaking, in a minor key. So minor keys, polytonal. Polytonality is basically when you have more than one key going at the same time. So like, for example, your right hand might be in G minor, but your left hand is in G sharp minor, and you play as if you're in the same key in terms of the coordination of the harmonies and the chords and everything, and the chords and melody, but you stay in two separate keys on the two parts. They're lining up, but just sort of like always missing by a half step or whatever distance you have between them. And I did a little bit of experimenting with some, G minor minuet, sort of a young student, young pianist piece. And it goes, but finding a way to play it so that I switch between polytonality and the key of G minor kind of allows you to take even smaller steps than a half step because of the way the setup is placed. And those smaller than half step steps sound great when you are dealing with so many half steps. So, another just simple example is just a chromatic scale. When you have this, sounds great, versus it just sounds a little bit wrong. Major scale versus the chromaticism also complements this kind of setup. This was great. This was really fun, and I learned a lot from doing this, and I hope you enjoyed watching it.